Okay, thank you for joining this session, Asian Prosperity Fostered by the Human Exchange, the next 50 years of the ASEAN-Japan relations. I'm Kei Koga, Associate Professor at the Nanyang Technological University, and I'm going to be the moderator of this session. This session is special because it is the first webinar of the Asia Undercurrent Season 4, which is the 19th session of the series, as well as the first live online hybrid session with the Nikkei's Future of Asia event. And then we have the three excellent panelists. The first, on my very left, the Dr. Maria Monica Wihardja, visiting fellow at the ICS Yusof Ishak Institute, Singapore. And the next, Professor Kitti Prasirtsuk, professor at the Thammasat University, Thailand. And then the Ms. Angeline Tan on my left, the analyst at the ISIS Malaysia, Institute of the Strategic and International Studies, Malaysia. Each of the panelists has their own expertise, such as the economics, international relations, and Japanese politics. But everybody has their experience in the exchange programs in Japan. So they are the perfect panelists for this session. In this panel, we will discuss the past, present, and the future of the human exchange between Japan and Southeast Asia. And in my brief introduction, I would like to quickly highlight the achievements of the ASEAN and Japan in 2023, last year, the 50th anniversary of the ASEAN-Japan the friendship and cooperation. Both held a summit in December and issued a vision statement, which emphasizes the human exchange and mutual understanding, not only among the current leaders, but the next generations. In fact, the vision statement, they placed human exchange titled Heart-to-Heart Partners Across Generations at the top of the list, followed by the economic cooperation and security cooperation. And this is, I think, significant because too often human exchange is put on the back burner. And so this indicates that both Japan and the ASEAN takes the human exchange more seriously. And to be sure, Japan has already many of the human exchange programs through the public as well as the private initiatives, such as the Japan East Asia Network of the exchange of students and the youth, so-called the Genesis. And then Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA, has the JICA Chairs Lecture Series. Also in the private sector part, Sasaka Peace Foundation has the Asia Statesman Forum, which was previously organized by the National Graduate Institute for the Policy Studies. And then we could actually go on. But the vision statement added the new exchange programs focusing on business leaders and also researchers. And then particularly, both ASEAN and Japan created the new program called the Partnership to Co-Create the Future with the Next Generation, World Project 2.0. And this project is organized by the Japan Foundation and then aims to facilitate human exchange of the more than 10 million people over the next 10 years with the two-pillar project, two-way intellectual and then cultural exchange, and then Nihongo Partners, which is the Japanese language training program. Therefore, more emphasis is on the people-to-people exchange for the future of our the relationship. That's why this session is very interesting and then important. So before we begin the discussion, I would like to provide a few housekeeping notes to explain the Q&A session for the both live and then the online audiences. If you are attending this symposium in person, you can raise your hand and the staff will provide you with the microphone when we open the floor. And then for the online participants, please check the screen below. There is a little box labeled the question. Please type your questions in the box, and then they will come to my attention. So now let's move on to the first section. I would like to ask each of the panelists to make the initial the 5 minutes the statement. All of you have had the experience in Japan, such as the intellectual exchange, field research, and then the visiting fellowship at the academia and also the policy institutions. It would be great if you could actually touch on your personal experiences in Japan as a part of the self-introduction, and when discussing your thoughts on the people-to-people relations between the Japan and Southeast Asia. So let's start from the Monica-san, and then the Kitti-san, and then the Angeline-san. So over to you, Monica-san.
Okay, konnichiwa. Japan is ASEAN's most trusted partner, according to the State of Southeast Asia report conducted by my institute, ISIS, Yusof Ishak Institute. And Japan's soft power and influence in Southeast Asia is very much underpinned by people-to-people connections. That includes human exchange programs, human capital development, technology, transfers, popular culture, and tourism. My first people-to-people connections with Japan went back to my high school days. I was privileged enough to go to an international school in Singapore and the United States when I met my first Japanese friends, with whom I'm still keeping in touch. And in fact, this summer, we're gonna have our high school reunion. And this kind of friendship making continued to my university days. Fast forwarding 3 decades, last year I was given the opportunity to study in Japan at the Japan Center for Economic Research as the Nikkei Asia Scholar 2023. And during that scholarship, I studied the role of socio-cultural factors, labor market reforms, and ASEAN-Japan digital cooperation in Japan's digital transformation. By staying and working in Japan for 3 months, I learned not only about Japan's digital transformation, but also about Japanese workplace culture, about culture more generally. And 2 years ago, I also received a generous research grant from Japan Economic Foundation and from AREA to look at Indonesia's industrial policies in digital economy. On a more personal level, Japanese culture is part of life. I grew up watching Oshin as TV series and grew up singing this Japanese song. It's called Kokoro no Tomo, which means friends of hearts, by Mayumi Itsuwa, that is very popular in Indonesia. And in fact, shabu-shabu is my family's to-go and favorite food. So for family meal, we either go out to eat shabu-shabu or make our own shabu-shabu at home. And in fact, we even have our own family recipe for shabu-shabu sauce. And of course, mixed with Indonesian chilies. On a more macro level, ASEAN and Japan are making the right step in terms of redefining ASEAN and Japan relationship. That has been grounded on the principles that were laid out almost 50 years ago in the Fukuda Doctrine to seek self-restraints in Japan's military power. On the contrary, the doctrine proposed that ASEAN and Japan relationship would be based on heart-to-heart relationship and equal partnership. But what do we mean by heart-to-heart relationship? I think the essence of heart-to-heart relationship lies in the people-to-people connections. And as shown by many studies highlighting Japan's successful soft power and influence in Southeast Asia, it begs the questions, why do we need to redefine ASEAN and Japan relationship? In my personal views, there are 3 main reasons. First, with increased geopolitical tensions, it is unclear what will shape Japan's new emergent grand strategy and whether Japan will seek to cast off its self-restrained posture based on the Fukuda Doctrine or start formulating a more realist approach. and this may impact its relationship with ASEAN. Due to perceived security and military threats, especially from its immediate neighbors of China and North Korea, and the possible crisis in the Taiwan Straits, Japan has made a series of incremental security reforms, including by doubling the military spending to its GDP by 2027. Moreover, US and Japan's strategic interests may not always align when it comes to managing the rise of China, while the upcoming US election adds another layer of uncertainty. Secondly, economic power relativities between ASEAN and Japan have changed significantly since 5 decades ago, with ASEAN gaining more economic heft. Developing ASEAN countries have been catching up. For example, Japan's GDP per capita used to be 20 times that of Indonesia and 40 times that of Vietnam in the 1970s and 1980s. Now it is only about 10 times for both countries. Singapore's GDP per capita has already exceeded that of Japan, and now Japan's GDP per capita is half of that of Singapore. And these developing countries are still growing faster than Japan. Goldman Sachs predicts that by 2050, Indonesia will be the 4th largest economy in the world, exceeding Japan. The relationship, therefore, needs to take this dynamic into account and shift from one of that patron-client or donor-recipient mindset to one of more symbiotic and more equal partnership. Thirdly, ASEAN and Japan shares new and mutually beneficial complementarities. Japan and ASEAN share emerging but common challenges, as already been mentioned by many earlier speakers, namely geopolitical polarization, climate change, and the need to transition to renewable energy, and the threat of AI. But Japan and ASEAN are also distinctively different in many areas. Japan has a much older population, while ASEAN, on average, still have a young population. Japan has more homogeneous population, while ASEAN has a very diverse society. And also, when it comes to digital technology, Japan has a comparative advantage in deep tech startups, while many ASEAN countries have comparative advantage in low-skill bias technologies, such as digital inclusion or financial inclusion, which may be beneficial for Japan's older population. There are still barriers to ASEAN-Japan people-to-people exchanges, among which are languages, immigration policies, protection to intellectual property rights, and the weakening yen. There are also risks facing the future generation, especially when it comes to people-to-people connections, including addiction to gadgets. I don't think you can make heart-to-heart relation and people-to-people connections when your face are always glued to gadgets. The risk of disinformation and echo chambering. We all live in our own little bubble, and growing distrust among each other, as well as rising authoritarianism that increases the risk of freedom of speech.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think like you touched on the really important keywords between Japan and the Southeast Asia, such as the heart-to-heart relations. So we'll get back to those kind of things later on too. But then please over to you, Kitti-san.
Okay, thank you for having me. Good afternoon. Myself, I came to just study in Japan at Tohoku University in Sendai in 1988. That was 36 years ago. It was still in the Showa era. Then I studied for my master degree at Keio University in the early Heisei years, about 30 years ago, thanks to the Japanese government scholarship. So my interaction with Japan spanned across the 3 eras, Showa, Heisei, and now Reiwa. So based on my almost 4 decades of experiences, today I would like to address 2 questions. First, what has been the past achievements and characteristic of human exchange between Japan and ASEAN? And second, how can we project the future of human exchange in the changing and uncertain world? First, to reflect the past. In fact, human exchange with Japan started as early as 400 years ago. I believe many of you in this room know Yamada Nagamasa. Anybody knows? He's the samurai who came to Thailand in Ayutthaya period, becoming leader of Japantown and army regiment chief to help the king fighting with the Burma army 400 years ago. And for a more recent period, economic development and industrialization stand out as an impressive achievement. Japan started human exchange early in the 1960s by granting scholarships and training technicians from Southeast Asia. Then followed by youth and cultural exchange in the 1970s under the Fukuda doctrines. And this activity, in fact, actually contributed to the exchange among ASEAN people themselves as well, not only between Japan and Southeast Asian people, because in ASEAN we did not have exchange activity, exchange opportunity at that time. So Japan contributed a lot for ASEAN people to get to know each other as well, become networking partner together. And when Japan came to invest extensively in the region during 1980s, from the 1980s, such human capital become instrumental in industrializations. Taking engineer for an example, half or more of engineering professor in Thailand study in Japan. This is more or less true for other ASEAN countries as well. And Southeast Asian and Japanese, they work together very well in factory and subsidiary in the ASEAN region, as demonstrated in flourishing export and burgeoning economy in ASEAN. Importantly, a few automobile companies have established R&D center in Thailand, particularly for pickup trucks and small passenger cars. And I have an interesting anecdote to share with you. I went to Michigan 5 years ago and learned that Japan automobile company in the US even hire Thai engineer and technician to work with them in the United States. So how our network has grown not only in ASEAN region but went to the United States as well. And more recently, on the occasion of 50th anniversary of Japan-ASEAN relation, Professor Koga has mentioned about this. Prime Minister Kishida announced the launch of partnership to co-create a future with the next generation, or WA Project 2.0, which is very well received by ASEAN countries. It is particularly delighted that Japan continue its goodwill in fostering human exchange between Japan and ASEAN as a sequel to WA Project 1.0 during 2014 to 2021, in which I had the privilege to serve as advisory committee as a representative from Thailand. In the picture, I went to the Prime Minister's office, visited the Prime Minister Abe wives, and to report on our activities of the Asia Center under the Japan Foundation Youth Exchange Program. And overall, I think Japan has both breadth and depth of human exchange with ASEAN. So what about the future in the changing and uncertain world? In line with Prime Minister Kishida's speech yesterday, I think we should prepare human capital to involve in green transformation, GX, and digital transformation, DX, through human exchange and networking, both in person and through online platform. I believe the partnership to co-create a future with the next generation would contribute to the efforts on GX and also DX. And the key word here in this initiative is co-creation, co-creations. So far, many Southeast Asians cartoonists work in the manga industry of Japan. And also in food service, we have seen fusion food innovation, mixing Japanese food with Southeast Asian ingredients and flavors. And I think more to come in pop cultures, co-productions, entertainment industries. So you can see that our human networking work from hard industry now moving toward soft industry as well in pop culture and entertainment. And there are also other challenges in the region like maritime security and other defense-related issues. Actually, I think we have under-tapped human capital in this area. In fact, for Thai people, we have a lot of alumni studying at the National Defense Academy or BOEDAI of Japan. And they grow up to take important posts in the Army, in the Air Force, and also in the Navy. 7 years ago, the Air Force chief was the alumni of the BOEDAI or National Defense Academy of Japan. So we can utilize this human networking on the defense issue as well. And one more thing I would like to suggest here for new generation is that in the case of ASEAN country, particularly Thailand, we have generation change a lot in political world. New politicians have been elected. They are in their late 30s, even early 30s, late 20s. So I think we should foster exchange and networking among young politicians in ASEAN and Japan. That would be very interesting rather than waiting for them to grow up. I mean, we can do at their early stage of their career as politicians to do exchange and networking. And for myself, this year I would come back to Japan as a visiting research fellow under Japan Foundation grant. I would do my research on local revitalization, Jiki Kaseka, regional revitalizations. So I think I would like to learn from Japan to apply to my countries and in ASEAN, because now in Thailand, we are facing aging society, we facing depopulation in rural area. It just started, so I just want to learn from Japan. I think Japan faced many challenges, but still Japan is a forerunner in Asia in many ways, so Japan has many lessons that we can learn. So I think no one is too old to learn, so I come back to learn in Japan. I come back to spend a year in Japan. I am very excited to come back to Japan this time. So thank you very much for your attention.
All right. Thank you very much for your comprehensive covering what you actually experienced in Japan, and also like what we are going to actually what we need to do like in the future for our relationship. Okay, let's move on to Angeline. If you could actually make the 5 minutes point statement, that would be great.
First, I want to thank the conference organizers for inviting me to be part of this panel on people-to-people exchanges. It's a topic that deeply resonates with me, as I'm sure is true for my fellow panelists as well, because of our experiences of having studied here in Japan. I think my fellow panelists have already touched a lot on why Japan is so important to ASEAN. So I want to focus my remarks on what my personal experience here has been, my interactions here with the people, and what my observations are about ASEAN-Japan relations in relation to actual people-to-people exchanges. Let me give you a quick introduction. My first trip to Tokyo, I stayed here for 1 year. And I was here as for a student exchange program also at Keio University, and that had a profound impact on my life. One of the reasons why I chose Japan as a study destination, I have to admit, probably is inspired by the Malaysia's Look East policy, a policy that Tun Mahathir first launched in the 1980s. The inspiration behind this policy is our admiration towards Japan for your strong economy, your high standards of living, your work ethic, quality education, the list goes on. And because of all of these things, my government encouraged us to look towards Japan for lessons on how to become a developed nation. So I have to admit that although I was not officially under this Look East policy, I adopted this attitude, and I guess you can say that is a reflection of heart-to-heart ties. A few years later, I came back as a visiting research fellow at the Japan Institute of International Affairs, as you can see in the photo. Those are some of my colleagues. I spent 3 months here traveling all around Japan, getting updated about the strategic situation here, the strategic concerns of the country. And I met with so many experts, scholars, government officials, even some former ambassadors, all of whom were incredibly generous in sharing their insights and their knowledge with me. And I have to say that it definitely played a role in adding more depth and understanding to my understanding of Japan. And I'm very grateful for this experience. It has been invaluable. And I have to emphasize that throughout this experience, the Japanese have been incredibly warm, giving, and generous, not only with your knowledge, but also your personal time in showing me your country, taking me around to different prefectures and cities, and some of my friends have even personally hosted me in their homes. So I want to emphasize this generosity and how much I appreciate it. But I have to admit that my time here, I have also felt a lot of feelings of frustration. And so I want to, please, I would hope, I hope that you allow me to share my views frankly. So why I say this is because my entire time here, I felt that my role as a Southeast Asian was to be a sponge. I was expected to absorb all of the information and insights that was given to me. And while I appreciate this, I felt frustrated that I had limited opportunities to share from Southeast Asia. Rarely did I receive any questions about what is happening in my country or in my region, or what my perspective might be, or my fellow Southeast Asian colleagues. And so I began to realize that perhaps Japanese understanding, awareness, maybe even curiosity about Southeast Asia was lacking. Whenever I spoke to people, especially young people, I found that your understanding of Southeast Asia is quite outdated. Some of your imagination of Southeast Asia is actually from 20 years ago. People don't realize how much Southeast Asia as an entire region has developed. Our digital transformation in the last 5 years alone has accelerated to such a pace that quickly could rival Japan's or outpace. Few realize that ASEAN is poised to be the world's largest financial technology market much sooner than you might think. And so, Southeast Asia is equally an exciting region to watch, but I didn't really sense that Japan had much genuine interest in the region. And because of this, I have this perception that the level of interest between Japan and ASEAN is disproportionate. You might even say one-sided. Let me give you an example of this. Japanese influence in Southeast Asia is obviously very strong. My fellow panelists have already given you multiple examples of the importance of you to us. But let me paint a picture of what it's like to be in Malaysia. When you walk down Bukit Bintang, the busiest street in Kuala Lumpur, you instantly see the flagship Uniqlo store. That's the first thing you will see. It's 3 stories high. Right across the street, there's a Muji store. Japanese restaurants all down the street. And just last year, they opened a Don Quixote department store 3 stories high with 3 more outlets due to open very soon across the city. Japanese presence in my city alone is undeniable. It's everywhere. It's something that we embrace warmly. And we love it. We really genuinely love Japanese presence, culture, whatever it is. But I'm very disappointed that I can't say that's the same the other way around. When I look around Tokyo, I hardly see any Southeast Asian influence at all. So when we talk about people-to-people relations, the key word that we usually use, apart from heart-to-heart ties, is mutual understanding. If that is true, let me ask you these few questions. Don't look at economic statistics, facts, and figures. Beyond that, do you understand our perspective? Do you understand the driving forces of social and political change that is shaping our region? If your answer is no, then we have to be honest with ourselves that perhaps people-to-people exchange is not as strong as we think, or at least not what it used to be, like in the 80s, I guess, or 90s. And I think this friendship is something that we shouldn't take for granted, even though it's well established, strong and friendly. We should continue on this momentum, otherwise we risk losing this, something that is very, very precious, invaluable, and has taken decades to grow. And I hope that we won't take this opportunity for granted. I think one of the easiest ways to start is to encourage interest in young Japanese people, and I really hope to see more young Japanese students studying in Southeast Asia, because we have lots of interesting things to share with you as well. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you so much, dear. I think, dear, I really appreciate your kind of candid, opinion about the people-to-people exchange, and traditionally how we actually conceptualize it, and then how we actually see it from the perspective. But I think this is a kind of really important message that like we have to all take into account. There are many great things, like positive kind of relationship between Japan and Southeast Asia, but at the same time, like nothing is going to stay the same, and we have to actually always kind of improve what we actually need to do, and then in order to do that, like we always have to update what's going on the ground in Southeast Asia and also as well as in Japan too. So I think like the challenges like we are going to face is probably like that is the thing. And then also the keyword for the 50th anniversary of Japan-ASEAN relations is that co-create. So that means we have to kind of work together. That means like we have to facilitate mutual understanding as well. So maybe like we need to actually do more about those kind of people-to-people exchange for the betterment of our relationship. So okay, so we have a couple of time for the discussion, probably like 10 minutes or so. And then I prepared for the 3 questions, but then I think like most of some of them were already covered by your 5 minutes remarks. But then I asked just anyways, and then if you could actually pick and choose some of the questions you are interested in and responding, and that would be great. Or if you have any kind of like different points you want to make, that's fine too. So here's the 3 questions. The first one is, from your personal experience, how do you see the Japan-Southeast Asia people-to-people exchange in the broader context, including the severe geopolitical and then geoeconomic situations like US-China strategic competition, war in Ukraine, and conflicts in Gaza? What is the significance of the Japan-Southeast Asia human exchange? Is it related or it's not like related? It actually exists on its own. I want to actually ask your opinion about it. Second, are there any particular trends in human exchange between the Japan and the Southeast Asia that you think are not seen in the other region of the world? So it's kind of like the unique kind of characteristics. And then a third one is, do you see any tangible outcomes of the human exchange between Japan and Southeast Asian countries? In the past, we had extensive human exchange programs and human interactions. Is that actually, how did it help us improve our relations? And also, what did we get out of it? So 3 questions, and then I will ask the kind of reverse order. So starting from, Angeline, if you could talk a little bit about it, anything like you can. And then also ask later the Kitti-san and then Monica-san.
Sure. I guess I'll take the easy question about tangible outcomes. I wouldn't bore you with the list of, for example, ODAs that has been very successful in Malaysia. But I think one thing that I think is very interesting about people who have had, Malaysians who have had exchanges here in Japan is when we come back, I think the biggest change for us is this new perspective that we gained. To be able to experience a completely new culture and to come home, have reflection, and be inspired on how to actually improve our country. I think that is something that is very meaningful and very close to the hearts of those who have had exchanges in Malaysia. And that is also one of the most enduring features of the people-to-people relationship, I think.
Great, thank you so much. Kitti-san?
Okay, I address the second question first on the trends of Japan-ASEAN human exchange. I think I would like to follow up what Angeline said on exchange between Japan and ASEAN. I think, in fact, Japan started to emphasize two-way exchange between Japan and ASEAN since the Fukuda doctrines a long time ago, almost 50 years. But still, the two-way exchange still lacking. But I think we cannot blame Japan alone because Southeast Asia need to have something to offer, so that they would be interested in. But at least perspective, they should, both sides should understand perspective of each side. But for what to offer, I think it's also depend on Southeast Asia as well. Nowadays, I think people tend to be attracted by pop culture, entertainment, and so on. And that we can co-create with Japan. I think joint production would be the good way to generate interest among each others. And I believe that Japan would continue to emphasize two-way exchange in the new initiative by Prime Minister Kishida. But we need to make more efforts for the real two-way exchange. And for Japan-ASEAN human exchange in the Indo-Pacific area or amid the US-China competitions, I think human exchange and networking between Japan and ASEAN become increasingly important, but maybe not only limit to Japan and ASEAN. It can be extended to South Asia and even to Korea and even to China in some aspect as well. But for Japan and ASEAN, on decoupling of supply chains, friendshoring, I think Japan can have the confidence in all the ASEAN countries that we are good friends of Japan, and we very welcome Japanese investment in many industries, even in services, hard, soft industry. We would like to work with Japan. That means human exchange, human networking become even increasingly important. And if we think about the challenging trends in terms of climate change, in terms of technological transformation, digital transformations, we need to step up our efforts for human exchange and networking to cope with the changing world. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just kind of quickly ask the question about the human exchange. Do you think the human exchange should be conducted in the kind of high level, or like the undergraduate level, or like the student level, or the policy level, or like a high school level? I mean, which one is the most? If you need to prioritize,
I think the standard answer would be at the youth level. At the youth level. University student, high school student, but I would like to give more perspective because countries in ASEAN, they are aging as well, in Thailand, in Singapore. So we cannot look at youth alone. People live longer. Maybe we also need to do people-to-people exchange at the older age as well.
Okay.
And also at the local level. As part of my research on local revitalization, what I would like to do is to foster more local-to-local relation between Japan locality and also Thai locality and also other ASEAN countries. Now, for example, Thailand locality, they also become more autonomous and they have some budget and they can do some exchange activity with Japanese locality as well. So I think we should foster people-to-people exchange at all levels, not only new generations, but also older generation. What's wrong with old people? Okay, and they should have a chance to do the exchange as well. And also the level of central government, of course, local governments, academic exchange, and so on.
So more
NGO
comprehensively,
exchange,
okay.
Comprehensive.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So the Monica-san, do you have the, yep.
Just to follow the discussions from the previous speakers,
Sure.
I think it can be understood why, at least before, it was more of one-way exchange, because ASEAN was, as a region, still was like a less developed region, except maybe at that time Singapore and Brunei, right? But I think it's quite ironic that by the time that ASEAN becomes more of an interesting region to Japan, then the yen is weakening. So it's becoming more expensive to send students and workers to ASEAN countries, right? And I think I was just told by my colleagues at AREA that AREA will set up the School of Government to basically showcase of Southeast Asian good examples where Japan and other countries can learn from Southeast Asian peace and stabilities and economic development, right? So hopefully this kind of like one-way exchange will become more of a two-way exchange, right? And just following Professor Kitti's remark, I may be biased, but then I think this kind of like human-to-human exchange can start even at the pre-kindergarten at very, very young age, because children don't have biases. So they don't know, they don't make friends because of their nationalities. They don't make friends because of their race or ethnicities, right? So I don't know how to make it happen, but I think schools need to be more internationalized, like what was mentioned in one of the previous sessions.
Yeah, yes, more interactions like in the younger kind of generations, and then also the maybe like we could actually use the forum like the area where like the we could actually learn the Japanese could actually learn about the Southeast Asia more intensively. Okay, great. Okay, thank you so much. I think we probably like need to kind of move on to the Q&A session. And then if you have the question, if you are in the forum in person, please raise hand, and then the staff is going to take your the question. And also online, I'm going to check the questions I got, and then they ask those questions to the panelists. So please, if anybody has the gentleman over there in the center of the table.
Thank you for your conversation. I'm Makita from Central Tanshi. In terms of human interaction, I believe that Japanese youth are becoming inward-looking, not only in Southeast Asia, not only, but in general. It's very regrettable. Today, I have a pleasure of meeting wonderful friends from Southeast Asia, and I believe opportunity like this are extremely important. I'd like to hear from you about what action you would like to see from Japanese people for human interaction.
So to every panelist, the question.
Okay, everyone.
Or who?
Mainly Miss Angeline Tan, about your frustration about when you know.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I mean, I think it starts very simply as just if you don't know, ask, right? I would have loved to share what is happening with my country, my region, my perspectives, but also to address a little bit about what the other speakers touched on. Yeah, I totally agree. Like we understand why in the beginning it was more one-sided, but 50 years later, I do think that at this point we have something to offer. So I have 2 points. One is, of course, we realize that Japan is still the more advanced country here, but it doesn't mean that you can't spend a year, a few months, maybe even 1 week having some kind of student or cultural exchange in our countries. And the value of this could be just the experience to interact with the local people. That itself is invaluable. That itself is drawing these people-to-people connections. That's one. My second point is also about the co-creation initiative that Japan and ASEAN relations is trying to push forward with. I I think this is a fantastic idea to try to push this, this initiative of having a two-way street. One thing that I really hope to see, though, is that when we are coming up with these programs, at the starting point, when we are designing a program, we start with the objective of creating space for Southeast Asians to participate and to have something to offer as well. Don't make it an afterthought. That would be some of my thoughts on this issue. Thank you for the question.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else for the question? Okay, so the lady over there.
Thank you very much, panelists, for the insightful discussion. My name is Santi from ASEAN Productivity Organization. So I have questions regarding, I think it's great to assess the readiness of Southeast Asian workforce in terms of taking position or in Japan, especially when it comes to human exchange. So I would like to hear from the panelists, how do you see the readiness of Southeast Asian people, especially the workforce, in terms of the exchange in Japan?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
May I ask the probably Monica-san first, and then the Kitti-san and Angeline?
Okay, so I think as already mentioned in my earlier talk that I think Japan and ASEAN has a lot of complementarities in terms of Japan. I mean, we're not aging at the same rate, so it's good that I think ASEAN countries have a lot of opportunities to send workers to Japan's aging population and to fill the gaps, to fill in the labor shortages in Japan. While a lot of ASEAN economies have young demography and also a lot of labor surpluses. In terms of readiness, I guess maybe we have to first identify what kind of occupations and tasks and jobs that may be needed in Japan. There are some occupations that could easily be replaced by automation, or even now AI. Even white-collar jobs can be replaced by AI. One really potential industry or sector is maybe the care industry, right? The care economy. Who would want to be taken care of by like a robot, let's say, right? And I think I know that, let's say, Japan and Indonesia already has an agreement to bring and to train workers, Indonesian workers, to come to Japan to fill in labor shortages in the care economy. I think there are three kind of challenges, not only like technical, not only technical skills, but also in terms of language and also in terms of culture. I feel that Japan has a very high context culture or society, while ASEAN has more of low context society. And in terms of workplace discipline, attention to details, and also like teamwork, this is something that we may not really have in ASEAN, let's say, although ASEAN has a lot of other advantages as well in terms of the characteristic of its workers. So, and I noted that also in terms of Japan's labor or migrant policies, right? They're still not perfect. There's still need protections for migrant workers coming from ASEAN. And maybe the last thing that I would like to mention also about the weakening yen, right? So it's the tide has slowly turned in terms of Japan attractiveness to work for ASEAN workers, although until now it's still an attractive country to work for many of ASEAN workers. But then because of the weakening yen, we can expect that the average wage in ASEAN and in Japan could be narrowing, and Japan could be less attractive for ASEAN workers to work.
Okay. Kitti-san?
I add only one point because Monica has covered comprehensively. I think the big impediment to work in Japan for Southeast Asian is language barrier, language barrier. But I believe the advancement of AI, a translator, and so on would help a lot. So that means Southeast Asian do not have to spend years to pass the exam, to master the language. So AI would help and equip Southeast Asian to be able to work in Japan more.
So it could provide more opportunities for the Southeast Asian to work in the Japan.
Right.
Great, thank you. Angeline, do you have anything to add?
I echo the sentiments that language barrier is probably a big issue. I'm not sure about the statistics, but my sense is that ever since Tun Mahathir stepped down as Prime Minister, these kinds of exchanges, working here and studying here, those numbers seem to, or interest in Malaysia has also seemed to drop. It could be because of language, but I think also other countries have started to look more attractive for work opportunities. I think Australia is a very big example of very high standards of living and very high wages. So wages might also be an issue.
Okay, right, great. Thank you. Any other questions from the floor? No one? All right, so I actually want to move into the more kind of online. Got the question from the online, and then I think because of the time constraint, I am going to just kind of ask the one thing, which could be the kind of difficult, but then I'll ask anyways. So the one is so it says that traditionally exchange programs measure success by the number of the participants. Instead, propose the alternative metrics to assess the true impact of human exchange on the ASEAN-Japan relations. How can we measure shifts in the mindset, cross-cultural empathy, and the creation of the future leaders who prioritize regional cooperation? So it's more like we just kind of not only counting the numbers to assess the success of the exchange, human exchange, but then qualitatively, what can we do? What can we actually use to understand the success? If you have I mean, this is an open question, and I know it's a really difficult one, but then if you have any kind of idea, that would be great. So anybody who? Let's. May I ask the Kitti-san first? Yeah, because
I think in fact we can measure the changing mindset or the positive attitude toward Japan from the ICIS Yusof Ishak Institute that Japan scored as the most trusted country among major powers consecutively for 6 years. And I think there are many indications how Southeast Asia perceive Japan positively. For example, in Indonesia, a few months ago, there some organized Japanese food, seafood fair, something like that, and many Indonesians flooded the exhibitions. They come to taste and buy Japanese seafood. That very comparable to other country nearby Japan, who pretty much fear Japanese, water treatment, thing like that, and they do not want to have Japanese seafood, for example. So that's how Southeast Asia, they are well informed, but they seem to like Japan a lot. They like Japanese food and so on. So there are many indications that show Southeast Asia very positive toward Japan.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you so much. Anything to add, Angeline or Monica-san?
So I think because the metrics of success, right? I think it could be expanded beyond the number of participants. You can actually look at the diversity of the participants, right? The countries where they're from, and also the quality of the outcomes. For example, like publication, right? And it's always good to have an alumni network of people who have done exchange program. I mean, even connecting to my colleagues here whom I have not met before I came here, it's already really good, right? We can continue to talk about Japan. I think having a network of alumni of people who have done these exchange programs, I think could help.
Okay. So more kind of follow up, the kind of like a network. I mean, like following up the conference and then the long lasting kind of relationship should be.
Yeah. Just making sure that we keep engaging and we keep interacting.
Right. Angeline?
I agree. I think that when it comes to have this narrative of strong relations, it's very clear in the government and policy level, and things like publications and having alumni networks, not just within our own respective countries, because I think our own respective countries have these like Japanese alumni networks, but something that maybe is a bit more regional, something that also has more frequent alumni exchanges in Japan. I think that's really helpful. But at the people level as well, I want to share a small little something. Yeah, I've come across actually quite a few older Japanese people who could speak such fluent Malay language that could actually put mine to shame. And I was very, very impressed by that. And I really hope to see that, there's also this kind of interest coming in from more in the younger generation. It doesn't have to be many people, but these kinds of things, it really gives you such a big, lasting impression.
Okay. Yeah, great. Thank you so much. I think I want to actually continue this, but because of the time constraint, I think we have to wrap up here. And I think one thing I would like to kind of add is the heart-to-heart relations between Japan and Southeast Asia, and also equal partnership. This should not be taken for granted. I think we should always kind of think about what it means, and then we need to actually kind of improve update our kind of understanding of each other, and then we could actually reach to the mutual more kind of trust and then understanding too. All right, so this has been the really excellent discussion on the human exchange between Japan and Southeast Asia and also the ASEAN. And then please join me to thank all the wonderful participants here. And then. And thank you very much for joining this special session of the Future of Asia and the Asia Undercurrent. I have a couple of announcements. For the online participants, please check the screen below, and there is a little box labeled the evaluation. So your feedback would be highly appreciated to improve this webinar series. And then also just for your information, the next session of the Asia Undercurrent will be held on June 18th. And the title is Space, the Next Frontier, the New Area of Development, Competition, and Cooperation. Asia Undercurrent is free of charge, and the registration website will be uploaded soon. So we hope you can join next time as well. So thank you very much.
ご登壇の皆様ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and also the panelists. Now this is the end of the session.